Hello, everybody. This is Menopause Taylor bringing you the state of menopause in the world today. So here we are again, commonly women who want to start HRT schedule consultations with me. And they always ask me, how do I know where to start or if it's working? And they ask, which product should I use? Is there a formula? So I walk them through the entire process of how to choose, monitor, and adjust their HRT. So I thought, gee, I should do this for my students on podcasts. So this podcast is on the HRT-Choosing Process. In it, I'm going to lay out the basics of how you get started on a product, how you determine if it's the right product for you, and how to adjust it if it isn't. And while I'll be directing most of my comments to HRT, these principles are applicable to any hormonal medication. So if you're on birth control, the same things apply. That's why you should always listen to these things in order, and that's why you should listen to this podcast regardless. For purposes of simplicity and clarity, I will address estrogen and progesterone separately, and then I will combine them. For now, I want you to focus only on estrogen. Now, you already know that estrogen is your female hormone. It's the one your body depends on for many functions. And you know that estrogen loss is the definition of postmenopause. Estrogen loss is the reason for all your symptoms of menopause, and estrogen loss is the reason your risk for heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's skyrocket at menopause. If any of what I just said is not crystal clear, it means you have not listened to these podcasts in order or watched my YouTube videos in order or something. And if that's the case, you're shooting yourself in the foot, or maybe you're shooting yourself in the head. Way back in earlier podcasts on the estrogen window of opportunity, you learned that starting estrogen in the first 5 to 10 years of your postmenopause can help prevent heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's disease. But you learned that the estrogen has to meet a certain minimal dosage requirement and travel throughout your entire body rather than just staying confined to your vagina. Estrogen that travels through your body is called systemic estrogen. And then you learn that the primary purpose for using estrogen replacement is for alleviation of your symptoms of menopause, and the secondary purpose for using estrogen replacement is to prevent these diseases associated with menopause and the estrogen window of opportunity. You also learned that the dosage of estrogen that alleviates your symptoms of menopause may be inadequate for preventing any of the diseases. And you learned that there's a whole smorgasbord of estrogen products from which to choose. And having so many options can be confusing. Combine all that with the mantras that I've taught you in previous podcasts, and it's no wonder that you wouldn't know where to start. So let's work through this in a systematic manner. And you'll see that it involves a series of questions that you have to ask yourself and answer yourself in order to decide on your best starting point. The very first question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to use estrogen only for the primary purpose of alleviating my symptoms? Or do I want to use it for the secondary purpose of preventing diseases? By answering that one question, you dictate two different things. You dictate the kind of estrogen you'll need to use, and you dictate the minimal dosage of estrogen that you'll need to use. If you only want to treat your symptoms, you have two choices. You can use an estrogen that goes in your vagina, stays in your vagina, and only treats your vaginal symptoms of menopause, or you can use a systemic estrogen that travels throughout your body and treats all your symptoms of menopause. I've taught you about these two different kinds of estrogen, and in my YouTube videos and on my website, I've even made charts of them for you. So if you want to look at the charts, you can go to my website and see the charts that show you the differences in these two kinds of estrogen. But if you want to take estrogen to prevent diseases, in addition to the estrogen traveling throughout your body, it has to be a certain minimal dosage. If it's lower than that specific dosage, it will not prevent diseases. And so I've presented podcasts and videos on the different kinds of estrogen along with the dosages of each that is necessary for accomplishing the goal of preventing diseases. And I've made charts on that too. So if you go to my website, under the YouTube video tutorials tab, you can go to all the charts I've made for all of these things. And they are very valuable because basically having a chart has all the information in one place that makes it very easy for you to use it. Okay, now, the second question you have to ask yourself and answer yourself in order to choose an estrogen product is, what kind of delivery system do I prefer? In other words, do you prefer a pill, a patch, a skin gel, a vaginal ring? The answer to this question may depend on your need to reduce a side effect. For instance, all estrogen pills that you swallow have a slightly higher rate of blood clots than products that you don't swallow. Why? Because they travel through your liver, and that's where they cause a slightly increased risk of blood clots. So if you're worried about blood clots or you have a high risk of blood clots already, you might choose something other than an oral pill. Or the answer to this question may depend on your lifestyle and preferences. For instance, will you remember to take a pill every day? Or do you engage in an activity that might cause a patch to fall off? If you swim, get in hot tubs, use steam rooms, or sweat a lot, a patch may not adhere very well. Or do you want a product that you only have to apply every few days rather than every day? You replace most patches every 3 to 7 days. Or do you want a product that you only have to replace every few months, like the vaginal ring? If it's a bioidentical product you're after, both pharmaceutical and compounded products are options. It's all up to you. Once you've chosen an estrogen product and used it for a while, the next question is, how well is this product working for me? Well, the most important factor in answering this question is making sure you've used it long enough to be asking the question in the first place. One of the biggest mistakes women make is judging the product too soon. You have to use the product for about 2 months to have any idea as to whether or not it is working for you. If you've only used it for a few days or a week, it's too soon. I see this happen all the time. And unfortunately, women sabotage their efforts a lot by not staying on a product long enough to even know if it would have worked for them. Most of the time, a woman notices some pesky inconvenience that is temporary and completely normal, but she decides to stop taking the estrogen. For instance, if you have breast pain, that's normal. You've always had breast pain in response to hormones. It's what your breasts are supposed to do in response to hormones. Or women may have some bloating that would have been temporary if they hadn't stopped the estrogen. Most commonly, women continue to have certain symptoms that they had hoped to alleviate. This indicates that their dosage of estrogen is not high enough. But you won't know that either unless you stay on it long enough. The key is that unless you stay on an estrogen long enough, you will never, ever find a product that works. And the sad thing is that women who take estrogen for the long-term disease-preventing efforts stop it for short-term pesky things, and they completely defeat their purpose. If the estrogen alleviates all your symptoms of menopause, then it's working for the primary purpose. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's working for the secondary purpose. The secondary purpose has to do with protecting your heart, bones, and brain from heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's. So how do you know if you're accomplishing that goal? Well, to assess your heart, you can get cholesterol blood tests and other tests of cardiovascular function like echocardiogram and stress testing. To assess your bones, you need a DEXA bone density test, and it will reveal whether or not you've lost bone. And for your brain, well, sorry, but there's no test for that. The best you can do is to persistently challenge your brain with new, different, and difficult tasks. If you discover that any of these things, your heart, bones, or brain, is not adequate, you may need to adjust your estrogen. Okay, so let's say you stay on an estrogen product for 3 months and you don't like it, but you still want to take estrogen, just not that particular product. What do? The first thing you do is refrain from stopping it on your own. Instead, pick up the telephone, call your doctor's office, or if you have my chart, send a message. In your communication, be very specific. Say, I'm taking product X at dosage Y, but I am still having symptom Z. And your doctor will adjust your estrogen accordingly. If your symptoms indicate an inadequate dosage, she'll increase it. If your symptoms indicate a side effect typical of a certain kind of estrogen, she'll change it. And what about your heart, bones, and brain? If you discover that your estrogen isn't enough to prevent a heart attack, you may have to change your diet and lifestyle or add other meds. If you learn that you're still losing bone, you may need to increase your estrogen or add a SERM, which I've talked to you about in previous podcasts. If you learn that you're getting Alzheimer's, you'll need to address that. The key is to keep your priorities straight. Know why you're taking estrogen and be sure it's accomplishing what you want it to accomplish. Okay, let's switch gears now to progesterone. You already know that progesterone is the baby's hormone. It's not there for you. So the one and only reason to take progesterone is if you still have your uterus at the time of postmenopause. It serves the purpose of preventing uterine cancer. That's it. Otherwise, it just makes you feel yucky. So the very first question to ask yourself and answer is, do I still have my uterus? If you do, you will need to take both estrogen and progesterone. If you don't, you can take estrogen all by itself. So answering that question is easy. It's a simple yes or no, and then you move on. Next, you have to consider the regimen you're going to use. I taught you all about the two regimens for taking progesterone with estrogen previously. You see why you need to listen to these podcasts or watch my videos in order. So the first regimen is the cyclic regimen. In other words, it mimics your cycles. This is for women who haven't yet stopped having periods or who bleed on the other regimen. It involves taking progesterone on just some days of the month and having a period afterward. The alternative is the continuous regimen. On the continuous regimen, you have no cycles, so you have no periods. It involves taking progesterone every single day along with your estrogen every single day. There's actually a third regimen. It's kind of a combination of the cyclic and continuous regimens. And it involves taking estrogen alone for 3 days, and then taking estrogen and progesterone for 3 days, and then just repeating that pattern over and over and over. And that kind of leads us to the next question. The third question you ask yourself about progesterone is, what kind of delivery system do I prefer? See, this is just like the question you asked about estrogen. Do you prefer an oral pill, a vaginal pill, a cream, or a progesterone IUD? Now, your answer to this question about the delivery system for progesterone is critical, and that's because the vast majority of things that women don't like about HRT are entirely due to progesterone, not estrogen. And that's because progesterone has always been the hormone that made you feel yucky. It's the hormone of pregnancy. How did you feel when you were pregnant? The bloating, acne, depression, fatigue, weight gain that you had during pregnancy were all due to progesterone. Progesterone is also the hormone of PMS. The fatigue, bloating, acne, depression, irritability, breast pain, weight gain that you had in PMS were all due to progesterone. So many women who take progesterone as part of their HRT regimen have those same side effects at the time of menopause. But the progesterone delivery system can determine whether or not you have those side effects. For instance, you know that the side effects of progesterone result from systemic progesterone that travels throughout your body. But it's not necessary for progesterone to travel throughout your body. That's only necessary for the long-term benefits of estrogen. So a delivery system for progesterone that doesn't travel throughout your body might be attractive to you. And there is one, only one.